and welcome to the Ride of String podcast. I'm Kevin Sluter.
And I'm Matt Moreno.
And we are bringing you a show about orchestra teachers,
for orchestra teachers,
and those aspiring to be orchestra teachers. We all dedicate time and effort in the hope that students will keep our shared love of music into adulthood. While we have an impact on the students we see in the classroom, what are some other ways to go beyond and involve the greater community? Last month, Jen Drake was in the Dallas area to clinic a Region Orchestra and found some time to talk with Matt about her work with Serenata, the Boise Community Orchestra.
You want to get started?
Yeah, let's go. Interview.
So, Jen Drake. All right. Well, how about a little bit of your background?
Okay.
Did you grow up in Idaho?
I did not grow up in Idaho. I grew up in Troy, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. Grew up there playing in the youth symphonies. Had the best orchestra teacher ever, Alan McNair. He's still out there doing the things. If you're looking for another guy to come to your region, Alan McNair. He's really fantastic, brilliant. He's I think he's working on a book right now that probably everybody should buy and have on their shelves to learn more about string teaching and pedagogy and just being a decent human being. So I grew up there, and I wound up in high school playing in a lot of community orchestras. Played in Rochester and Lake St. Clair Shores and Macomb Symphony, doing a lot of that kind of thing because I really just wanted to learn as much as possible and as much repertoire as I could, before going off to college. And so I spent lots and lots of time in the community orchestra world as a kid and trying to figure that out and see, what makes these things tick. And there were, these orchestras that are, not exactly amateur, but not quite, super professional either. Somewhere in that great in-between, the regional orchestra.
Yeah.
Playing, Hindeman's Symphonic Metamorphosis at 14, Beethoven 9, doing all of these huge pieces before I was 18. It really shaped who I've become as a person.
Yeah.
So that was just, a really incredible and valuable experience as a high school kid, going and doing all that. I just thought, they need a viola and I've got one here. So, we'll go and do that, But, I remember just playing, crazy stuff like, Don Juan and whatever, and just hanging on for dear life and trying not to upset the balance too much. But
everybody needs a violist, huh?
Everybody needs a violist, which is funny because we were talking about here at Region doing Carmen, and these kids are 14 through 18, and they've never done Carmen. By the time I was 14, I'd played it 3 times in 3 different orchestras, So it's how could you not know Carmen? It's amazing to me. But that's a little bit about that. Went to Grand Valley State and Michigan State in Michigan. I met my husband at Grand Valley State, and then went to Michigan State to finish things up. So went there. I always felt a little bit out of place in college because in terms of just having a lot of energy and passion and drive and enthusiasm, and colleges wanting you to be let's talk about how that Italian 6th chord resolves and how to jump through the hoops and how to do all these things. I always felt a little bit like a black sheep in college, and it wasn't the enjoyable experience I thought I was going to have. I thought for sure I was going to go to college and people would be calling me at 3 a.m. to go sight read Bartok quartets, and that wasn't the situation at all. So I thought that would be happening, but no, it was different. Then. Met my husband, got married. He is a church musician, and he had a church music job in Saginaw, Michigan. And then we started looking elsewhere to kind of branch out to just get out of Michigan, have a new, exciting life experience.
Sure.
So about 20 years ago, we were doing some research, right when the internet was becoming a thing, and you could actually, internet your way around these things. And we were trying to find a city that was either by the ocean or in the mountains, because Michigan has neither of those. We've got the Great Lakes, you've got some foothills, but that's about it. So we were looking for a place to go move where there would be plenty of artistic things. There had to be strings in the schools so I could have a teaching studio. There had to be an orchestra with a viola opening, which, as you know, now gets more and more rare to find those orchestras that have,
sure does.
They have that. And there had to be a job for my husband. And it all worked out that we wound up moving to Boise. It was never a hugely premeditated move, but that's how it worked out. Yeah. And so now we've been there for 19 years. And so I've been playing in the Boise Philharmonic for 19 years, the Boise Baroque Orchestra for, I think, 15. And then about 5 years ago, I became involved with the Serenata Orchestra of Boise, the community orchestra. And 2 years ago, I started conducting the Boise Philharmonic Youth Orchestra.
Yeah. So was the Serenata Orchestra, was that already a thing?
So Serenata Orchestra was kind of a thing. It was about 12 people that were meeting in a credit union meeting room. So they were meeting in this conference room at a credit union, and big props to Carissa Hardy for finding the meeting room at the credit union for them to rehearse at. So I've always, enjoyed all these community music making experiences that I had as a kid, being able to go in and play in these community orchestras and playing more than 35 Handel's Messiahs before I was 18, having all of those experiences. And I wanted to start to create those experiences for other people. So I had this idea for the sing-along, play-along Messiah that we now do in Boise. And one of my adult viola students had recently moved back into town and was playing with this small group of string players, the Serenata Orchestra. And I approached her and asked if this group would be interested in kind of anchoring this kooky idea of a sing-along, play-along Messiah. I figured there had to be enough people in the community who have at one point played an instrument, wanted to have a go at it again, or had sung these choruses from the Messiah that there's enough sort of communal knowledge that we could make this idea work. Yeah. And so she said, yes, our group can do that. Can you come in and conduct us for a few rehearsals? And I thought, stupidly, how hard could that be? Conducting, how challenging could that possibly be? But so anyway, I said, sure, let's go ahead and do that. So I went in and conducted a couple of rehearsals with them, and it was just, it was just a match made in heaven right there, me and the Serenata Orchestra. So each week, after I sort of took over the artistic reins there, just expanded. So we had our sing-along Messiah, then we went to doing an all-string concert. So we went from about 12 people to about 35 in that first maybe 8 weeks of working together. Yeah. And then we opted to go the route of having full orchestra. So over the summer, we did some recruiting, and then we had about 70 people in the room, and now we're an orchestra of about, depending on, schedules, 80 to 90 people all getting together, a community orchestra.
That's amazing.
Yeah, totally.
And the age levels?
Level is anything from, it's, you have to have graduated high school, or lied about it or whatever. You have to have gotten out of high school somehow, and that's it. So our youngest player, I believe, is 18, and our oldest is 85. And let me tell you, that 85-year-old Jackie, she is all over it. Yeah. She is a brilliant first violinist. She is so on top of things. So that's the great thing about music, is that you can still be 85 and just tearing it up back there in the first violin section, and she's just holding that section down.
That's so great. So how did y'all go about getting those numbers and recruiting the community to come out?
Well, a lot of the recruiting had to do with just sort of my longevity in the community, and having worked on building relationships and trust with people. I do a lot of clinics in schools. So a clinic I did maybe 15 years ago has now paid off in having, string players that they move back to town or whatever, and they're looking for somewhere to go play, and they know that, Serenata Orchestra with Jen Drake, that's got to be a good time. Yeah. So there's a lot of recruiting that I did 15 years ago without even really knowing it. I was just, going and helping the second violins that week over at Capitol High School or whatever. And now, like I said, these kids have moved back into town, or they've got jobs at the hospital or whatever, and they're in town and they want to play and recreationally. And that's really been an interesting thing for me to see which students have stuck with it. You know how you always think it's going to be the kids in the front row, the super hardcore kids who are going to be the ones who come back and want to play in the group. Right. And I've found time and time again, it's the kids in the middle to the back of the pack that are really connected and really love music. And, maybe they didn't quite get those opportunities when they were in high school, but they somehow connected and found that love for playing. And I think that's such an important thing to remember, because we put such a high esteem on our most high performing players, but oftentimes the ones that really truly are falling in love with the instrument are the ones that are just slightly off the radar, the ones who are in that second, third row, the ones who are in like maybe your third tier orchestra, who are just kind of figuring it out, but they found that connection and they strive to do it their whole life long. And that's what we're all trying to do.
I would say around here often we end up finding kids, as they're seniors, deciding what they're going to do. It's those kids you just talked about that are deciding to go out and be music teachers and study it. And again, they've just kind of been off the radar that you don't quite notice that. And so it's really neat, though, to see that happening and that they're going to be our future. And
Yeah. But every day is a recruitment day for Serenata Orchestra. So it's really all about building those relationships and creating a safe environment. If you're an adult and you're an amateur at something, it's a really different experience than being a professional and having it be your job. So this past year, I've decided to take up the euphonium just for kind of fun and enjoyment. And part of it is to sort of develop empathy for my brass players in my youth symphony, to go like, okay, what's actually hard about counting 173 measures of rest and coming out on the highest note you own? And like, well, that is really hard to do that. But it's also about developing empathy for my Serenata players, people who like maybe all the playing time they get in a week is this 2 hours of rehearsal. And what's that feel like? And what's that all about? And to have the brain power to know and understand music, but to not actually physically get my body to do the thing I want it to do, that's very humbling. And to understand that, everybody's really trying, everybody's striving to have the best possible product, and sometimes just like the technique gets in the way, and they just don't know how to do it, or they just, they know how to do it, like just can't get yourself to make it happen. But that's been one of the great joys of learning how to play euphonium this year, is really developing more of that empathy for my players.
So what's your favorite part about playing euphonium?
Oh my gosh, Tuba Christmas! Tuba Christmas is such a great time. So Tuba Christmas being a national movement where there's this event put on by your area tuba fanatics at Boise. It's put on by Boise State, Sarah Paradis and Bill Winkle. And we all gather together. You purchase your carols for a merry tuba Christmas. And then my favorite part was actually the rehearsal. It was a lot of fun. You just go in and play with a whole bunch of other people, and that's the exact feeling that my community orchestra members get. They go in and they've been preparing, and they show up to rehearsal, and they get to make music with other people. There's nothing else like it in the world. So that was my favorite euphonium experience this year. Plus, I got to decorate because, it's Tuba Christmas, so it had to be fun. So I made a bell cover using a steering wheel cover and some lights from the dollar store to put around the bell. So it was extremely tasteful.
Wow. It's really awesome. So is there another instrument you're going to be learning soon?
So I have one of those Yamaha Vinovas. Have you seen these?
No.
It's the future of casual music making. You have to look it up. So you have to watch the advertisements mostly because they're so cheesy and kind of terrible. Thanks, Yamaha. Yeah. But the Vinova is everything unholy about a soprano sax teamed up with the joy of recorder.
Oh my gosh.
So it's got like a soprano sax reed on it. It sounds kind of like a bad saxophone, but it's just terrible, and I think it's hilarious. So I'm going to be learning how to play that this year. It's basically recorder fingering, so I kind of already know how to play. But there's something about it that just really cracks me up. So Vinova is next on the list for this year.
I'm sure you can find some way to include that in a performance, too, right?
I absolutely can. I got two of them, actually, and my friend Laurel Talley, who's the orchestra teacher at Boise High School, she managed to use them in a piece called Calypso Jam. Do you know Calypso Jam?
No, I don't.
Okay,
I'm sorry to say.
You have to know Calypso Jam. It is a hilarious piece for, like, your, symphonic, like, 10th, 11th grade group, Calypso Jam. I can't think of who it's by, but there's a part where people can sing do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Really?
Or you can play the Vinova. I guess you can do whatever you want, but that's what Laurel opted to do, is have two of her very most hilarious high school students attempt to play that part on the Vinova, and it was just really silly and outstanding in every way.
That's so awesome.
Calypso Jam. It's really addictive.
Got it. All right. I'm excited. So I've heard so much about how you theme concerts and draw on the community to just come in and listen. What have been some of those examples?
Oh, yes. So for Serenata Orchestra, we do a lot of thematic programming, and part of it just has to do with the way that that I think about music and some of my past experiences. I played chamber music professionally for quite a long time in an ensemble that was bass clarinet and viola, and my bass clarinet partner, Owen Nielsen, always had fun ideas about programming, and so I think I've kind of taken a lot of that from him and then taken it to the next level. So with the Serenata Orchestra, you kind of have to sit and think about who wants to go to a community orchestra program, who thinks that sounds like fun. And I sort of realized really early on that it's like family and friends and maybe the occasional coworker that has been harangued into supporting their boss, something like that. But what if we took this thing, this really powerful agent of music making, the community orchestra, and turned it into something that was educational and fun for the audience, so that they felt they were 100% on board, and they were not only just like there to support their colleagues, but they were receiving something as well, and they could kind of get in on the act, as it were. Yeah. So thematic programming that we've done, our next concert is theme and variations, so that's always a pretty obvious one that audiences can understand. One of our first most successful ones was a concert called Clue, where we took different pieces of a quasi-mysterious nature or something and infused the entire evening with playing a game of Clue with the audience. So I had a actor dress up as like the Wadsworth character from the movie Clue, and the audience all got sheets of paper, and all of the clues wound up being numbers that they had to fill out. And if you added up the numbers, it would come up to a specific number, and that would be the person who had committed the crime that took place at the beginning. Okay. So at the very beginning of the concert, instead of me coming out to the podium, I had one of my all-time favorite students come out and put my scores on like he was going to start conducting the concert. And then I had 7 members of the orchestra dressed up like the characters from Clue. So there was like Miss Scarlet and Mr. Black and Colonel Mustard. But those characters were also different musicians in the orchestra. So like one was in the string section and one was the timpanist and somebody was the flute player. So that the characters could also be referring to the different sections. So I like, watch out for Mr. Green in this part. And like, oh, that's the flute. So they would know to go and gear their ears that way. But anyway, these characters would all stand up and everybody had sort of a murder weapon that they brandished threateningly, and then the lights went out and oh no, this character is dead, and gets dragged off stage very unceremoniously. And so then the evening started. So we performed Dance Macabre, and you know how there's the harp has the 12 plucks at the beginning for midnight. Yeah. So the audience had to listen and count those, and that would be one of our numbers that they would put on there. And then the next piece we did was the last movement of the Symphonia Concertante. And we did it the way Mozart intended with the scordatura tuning. Okay. So we talked a little bit about scordatura tuning and using that half step. And so 0.5 wound up being a number because it was a half step. Uh-huh. And then the final piece that we did was Elgar's Enigma Variations, which is just chock full of mystery and excitement and, one of my favorite pieces ever. So using this idea of Clue, we were able to talk about the different people that Elgar was writing about, and people would have to listen for specific things that would be assigned a number. So it could be there was a quiz sheet that went with it, so you could circle and have a number, and then you added up the numbers at the end of the night to get the answer. It was Miss Scarlet in the first violins. Oh. So yeah, if you ever go again, but it's ruined for everybody.
How often do you all do that performance?
So Clue, everyone's just kind of a one-off. You do the one thing, and then I'll probably save that one for future endeavors. Yeah. Another concert that we did that was wildly successful, and this is kind of the one to top, although I think I've got one for the following season. I've got 2 concerts in mind for the following season that I think are going to be really fun and silly. We did Law and Order, the TV show, Dun Dun. So I spent a ridiculously long amount of time figuring out how to make the Dun Dun sound using the full orchestra genre. So if you're curious and want to make your own sort of close to that, there's actually, it is a surprisingly dense sound with some slightly unfocused pitch centers. But if you have a basses pizzicato, a low A, cellos pizzicato, an E on the C string, slightly out of tune, and then you get a like the tire rim from a semi-truck, you get one of those, and you hit that with a hammer. And then I pitch some PVC pipes at an A, E, and a B, so that they're like, the low A on the piano, the low E. So pitch those and hit those with ping pong paddles with sponges attached.
All this for these opening 2 notes.
Yes, dum-dum. It's super important. Well, we used it several times because I'm sure that you've you've watched Law & Order more than once. So there was there's a gentleman in our orchestra, Joey Henson, who is a multi-talented man. He's generally our principal bass, but he also plays violin really well. He also plays cello really well, viola really well. And so the idea was that Joey, he was going to be a suspect in the show. So we started off the concert with Schubert's Unfinished Symphony because the idea was composers who had studied law and themes from cop shows. And we glued those together with a storyline. So we started with Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. Why was it unfinished? Well, the answer is because Joey stole a whole bunch of pages from the score. So the concert starts off with Joey opening up the score, ripping out a bunch of pages, stuffing them into his jacket, and then going and hiding out the first violin section. So throughout the entire evening, Joey would go and switch instruments, so he was always kind of like somewhere else in the orchestra, and there were a whole bunch of witnesses in the orchestra who would report as to his whereabouts, and that would either be the premise for getting us from a piece to a cop show somehow. And we had the world's worst pun about Aaron Copland, where it was time for the police to be intervening, and it was time to go to Copland. Isn't that terrible? The audience all took them a minute, and they were like, ugh. It's one of my favorite audience reactions of all times.
And so you just clearly go off of your resources,
yes.
What you know about your musicians,
yes, absolutely.
friends, and wow.
Everybody has some hidden, unusual talent that they need to bring to the front of the stage. One of our bass players, Bob Armstrong, in addition to being he's a great bass player, he plays saxophone, but he also plays the musical saw. So he was a soloist for one of our concerts, or he played the saw, and he did one of the Morricone piece. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but really, really, really beautiful. And there's nothing quite like a musical saw with orchestra accompaniment.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is starting to work its way into the youth orchestra you're conducting now?
So with the youth orchestra, there are a few more restraints in terms of programming.
I thought so.
It is with that, the things are taken somewhat more seriously, but I usually try to, the same kind of idea, who goes to youth orchestra concerts, it's parents, friends, family, who may or may not have ever been to an orchestra concert before. So I try to make it as user-friendly for them as possible, talk a little bit about the pieces. Our next concert that's coming up, we're playing Prokofiev Symphony 5, which is a dense and challenging first listen. So I plan to talk to the audience kind of at great length about what it is you're supposed to listen to and for, and what the music is about. You think of that, the first movement of the Prokofiev, and you think of that as being that is 12 minutes of some really big sounds a lot of time. But there's really just basically 2 themes that get layered over and over and over again. So if the audience kind of understands these 2 themes and what to listen for, it's going to be okay. If you're, somebody's dad of somebody who plays trumpet and you're just like, oh man, I got to go to this concert, this piece is weird. But if you've got something that you can listen to and you can have a greater understanding, and then, in the car on the way home, the kid goes, what was your favorite part? They can actually maybe have a conversation about it.
Sure.
Instead of just I had to sit still for, 45 minutes while you played something I didn't understand. But it's really important that these quasi-captive audiences, that if we can bring them on board and turn them into rabid fans of what we're doing, then they can go out and activate their community to go and I didn't think I'd like classical music, but I've been doing this thing, and you know what, it's actually really fun, and if I can understand it, anybody can, That's what we're after. So
that's really great.
Yeah.
And so where does your involvement fall in with the public schools? Are there a lot of orchestra programs around Boise?
There are a lot of, there's some really fantastic and brilliant string teaching and playing going on in Boise. So in terms of my involvement in the public schools, it's mostly just volunteer work, going in and like doing a viola sectional or clinicking an orchestra, or just, we're all in this together. So there's no need for me to be stingy with my time or resources. If I'm not doing anything and a teacher asks me, hey, can you come in and whatever, I'm there. I get around to, I probably visit at least 2 schools a week just to go and, help with whatever needs to be done.
Sure.
Well, in fact, this past couple of weeks, my friend Laurel, who I mentioned earlier, she ruptured her Achilles tendon, and she's bedridden. And it's like, what a terrible time, because it's like she's got her Christmas program coming up, and then there's the this big concert. Boise being a capital city, we have the Capitol Rotunda, the Chamber Orchestra does a concert there. Many of the Chamber Orchestra kids are also in my youth symphony, so I've been going in and covering some of Laurel's classes, so I'm going to help them out with that Rotunda concert. And their concert coming up, there's the teacher that used to teach at Boise High, Wendy Hartman, who is retired now, has been covering those classes so that they can still have a reasonably successful concert experience without their teacher, who is mostly fine, but she has to stay bedridden. If you've ever done an Achilles tendon, that's probably the worst injury you can do to yourself.
Imagine.
Oh yeah, and Laurel's a particularly active person, so for her to have to be stationary for upwards of 3 weeks is challenging. So I've been covering that. So that's another level of involvement, but it's just mostly out of the kindness of my heart and wanting to make sure that the community is coming together, and that like I said, we're all in this together. There's no need for pointless competition or trying to compare programs or any of that kind of thing, because we're all just trying to do the best we can where we are with what we've got.
So back to the community orchestra, and I guess with the youth orchestra, because that probably has more set parameters on expectations.
Right.
What do you want the musicians to come in already knowing when they do join the community orchestra?
Well, so we are a totally unauditioned orchestra. So What's interesting is that it kind of self-filters, which is great. People figure out right away if they're in over their heads, or if it's not the right kind of group for them. We're very friendly. It's a social, fun group, but we do take things very seriously. Even though we've got a playful heart and a fun attitude toward our music, we're still set on producing the highest quality music that we can. I always like to say, we're not screwing around. We're getting it done. But, it's the presentation is designed to be fun for the audience, and, of course, fun for the orchestra as well. What do I want them to know? As long as everybody's there and they're giving me their best, no matter what that is, it's going to be just fine. So we've had several people who have come in and been really on that adult learner path. We're like, okay, I'm mostly okay. I can shift to third position. We can sit down and talk through a part and go okay, here's where you can really contribute. Here's how you can stay out of the way here and still keep track of where you are, and then you can jump back on the train here. And that's been working out great. And some of the musicians who have not played for a long time or whatever have come in and felt really comfortable, and it's a safe place for them to re-enter into their lives as musicians.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
So for anybody listening out there who is trying to find ways to advocate for their own programs or find ways to channel their inner creativity, what advice would you have for them?
Just do it. That's it. Nobody gets out alive. We're all going to be, we have to just do the thing that you've been built to do. Don't hide who you are. Just do it. If you've got a creative idea, just go for it. Don't hide that at all, because there's too many things that are done because of staid and stoic tradition. And if it's not fun for you, if you're not having a good time, no one's having a good time. That's the important thing. Have a good time. Do the thing to the best of your ability. There it is. Life advice from Jen.
We hope you enjoyed our discussion with Jen Drake. The featured educational work at the end of today's episode is The Bells of St. Genevieve by Mauret, arranged by Smolinski. Listed as a grade 4, you can find it at luxmusic.com. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, shoot us an email at rightofstring@gmail.com.
Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and join us for our next episode.
See you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you.